Hi, my name is Chris, and today I want to talk to you about how you can improve the audio quality of your podcast with different types of microphones. On this list, I have a couple of very usual microphones that you might want to choose for podcasting. However, there are also a couple of microphones that might be uncommon to mention for podcasting specifically. However, they have good purpose on being on this list, and I will explain that later. First things first. Podcasting, a medium that is relatively easy to create. It is just the voice that you speak with, the guest that you introduce, and the equipment that you need to create podcasts is relatively minimal. Usually you just need a microphone of some sort, maybe an audio recorder, sometimes that can be your computer or iPhone or any Android device, and you're off to the races. Nowadays, you can even host your podcast for free with a platform called Anchor.fm or other podcasting hosts that you either pay for or they also offer free services. There are a ton out there and it is not easy to choose. However, the most important connection between you and your audience is how you create the podcast, how you record it. Now, I want to mention one thing first, and that is that most of the podcasts that are super popular aren't necessarily super popular just because they have amazing equipment. It's the same thing with everything. Whether it's a YouTube channel, a podcast, or a blog, it doesn't really matter if you use the most up-to-date equipment, the highest quality possible. But really, it mostly comes down to the content that you provide, not the quality with which it was created. I myself have listened to podcasts from people like Tim Ferriss even, where I thought that the quality was really subpar and I would actually have a hard time publishing a podcast episode like that. However, the guest was interesting enough and so I kept listening. So don't fuss about it if you don't have the financial means to invest in highly expensive podcast equipment. And that is exactly the reason why I am talking about the equipment that I'm talking about today, from a relatively cheap starting point to a more expensive setup. However, everything in between is still possible. And also, I like to consider things from multiple perspectives. So whether or not I can do multiple things with the gear I use. So the same thing I'm also going to apply here with podcasting. And some of the results might be interesting to you. One more thing before we jump into the microphones themselves. I'm not going to talk about more of the studio type setup, for example with the Shure SM7B, which is widely popular in the podcasting industry. However, you need a lot of additional devices to get those things running, and I consider that a studio setup. What I'm going to talk about today is more of the versatile run and gun, travel to your guest kind of setup that you can pack in a small backpack and it doesn't really weigh that much. Additionally, I'm also going to focus on equipment that's not overly expensive. So those are kind of the constraints that I want to work within here. So let's dive into the comparison and start with introducing the different equipment that I'm going to talk about. For one, you have the Rode VideoMic NTG right there. Usually that is outside the shot and I'm gonna put it there in a moment again, but I wanted to let you know that this is the microphone that I also use for recording the audio for this video, except for the tests, of course. This is also a microphone that I'm going to talk specifically about podcasting, so stay tuned for that info. Then we have the Shure Beta 57A, the ATR-2100, and the Rode SmartLav Plus. Last but not least, we're also going to talk about the Zoom H5, which you'll need for one of these setups. Now, as I've mentioned before, some of these choices aren't really necessarily that obvious for podcasting at first glance, but I think it will make more sense later down the road. Now let's have a look at the almost classic ATR-2100 by Audio-Technica. This is a microphone in the podcasting industry that is basically recommended by everybody for almost everybody who is starting out. This microphone costs under $100, sometimes even as low as $50. This microphone has a special functionality, being that you can use it for XLR as well as USB recordings, even though it is a mini USB plug. So this has a couple of great features comparing it to other types of microphones, and it is one of the microphones that is used by pretty much anyone. Huge podcast shows like the Tim Ferriss Show, for example, use this microphone as well. I've seen him use this in a recent remote interview even, so this is still on the table even if you have millions of downloads. So that's one to start with. Now, I've mentioned that you can use this with USB and XLR. The difference between the two, however, is pretty strong. If you start out with the USB connection or want to have the versatility of that function to just be able to record into your computer without needing any additional equipment, then that is still one of the best bets you have. However, it also gives you the option for XLR recording, and here's a sound comparison of especially the noise floor between those two modes. This is a demo recording of the ATR-2100 recorded over USB with my voice in this type of room. This is how it sounds. This is a demo recording of all three microphones at the very same time, pretty much at podcasting distance. This is how they sound with my voice in this type of room and without their pop filters. Now, listening back to that, I would say the different ways of connecting the ATR-2100 don't make that huge of a difference. The USB way maybe has a little bit higher noise floor, so it introduces a little bit more noise depending on what kind of audio interface or audio recorder you are using. Overall, I would say you can use both ways, but also consider listening to the other sound examples of the other microphones later on in this video to know better which one you might want to choose. Now, if you're looking into this microphone, you might also want to take a look at the Samson Q2U, which is kind of like a more modern version of this and a direct competitor to this microphone. It sounds almost identical, maybe even a little better based on other test results that other YouTubers have done. However, it gives you basically the same function and feature set. So that is an alternative to the ATR-2100. Now from this, let's go over to the purely XLR Shure Beta 57A and talk about its benefits and drawbacks. Now with this microphone, I currently have it with a pop filter that is magnetic, so I can just pop it on like this, and there's this magnetic ring which kind of protects it from falling off, and this is how it looks like without the filter on top of it. It is a purely XLR microphone, so you only have the XLR connection at the bottom of this thing. This microphone is built like a tank. It is incredibly sturdy. You can bounce it around. There's nothing going to happen to this microphone, even if you drop it or anything like that. This microphone, similarly to the ATR-2100, has a super cardioid pickup pattern, which means that it basically just picks up things from like a bubble in front of it. It does try to reject the sound from the sides and especially from behind the microphone. That is great for podcasting, and it's also the reason why these types of microphones are so popular for vocals as well as podcasting in general, because you usually have them in your hand right there, talking into them, and basically also reducing the amount of echo from the room that you're picking up. If you are traveling around in different types of locations and you can't really change what type of room you will be able to record in. This here reduces the echo just based on the fact that it doesn't necessarily pick it up as well as other types of microphones. But moving on. Now with the Shure Beta 57A and the ATR-2100, with both of these mics, you have the option to use XLR to record your audio. However, with that also comes the need to record to an audio recorder or audio interface. At the time when I started looking more into podcasting, I picked up the Zoom H5. This is a handy recorder. It has two XLR ports at the bottom of it. It also features a XY microphone capsule at the top, which can be replaced to also feature two more XLR ports, so you can get up to 4 XLR ports recording with this device. You can also set this up as an audio interface to your computer and record directly into your computer, or use any XLR microphone connected to it for remote interviews. However, for the most part, this is very useful just to plug in your microphone on the other end, and then use this setup for your podcast. And if you have two people set up with two microphones, you can just record both of the people into this device. You don't need an additional computer or anything like this. I'm not going to specifically talk about this XY capsule for podcasting, even though it gives you the option to also use that. However, it is not necessarily the best for podcasting because it picks up a lot of the room noise based on the pickup pattern being relatively wide. So that is one drawback. Now, if you have 3 people and you just have 2 XLR microphones, you might get away with using this as well. However, again, I wouldn't recommend it. Now, there are tons of different kinds of audio recorders on the market, and if I were to choose now and have a bigger budget, I would probably go for something like the Zoom H8 or the F6. Now, if I were to set up a new podcast with new equipment, I would probably choose the Zoom F6. It is relatively expensive compared to the H5 or H8. However, it does give the benefit of being able to record up to 6 channels, so up to 6 people in a podcast. And it also features 32-bit float recording, which gives you the option to later in post get any audio that potentially clipped or was way too silent back up to the level that you needed or wanted at. So that is one of the huge benefits of the F6, and that's also why I would probably pick it up if I had to choose a new right now. However, the Zoom H5 still has a huge point going for it, and that is the price point. This device right here is around 200 US, and that's just really incredible, because then with the combination of, for example, the Beta 57A, which is around 120 to 150, you're under $500 once you get the whole kit. Now let's jump into the more strange suggestions in terms of podcasting equipment, podcasting microphones, and that is the Rode SmartLav Plus. This is actually a lavalier microphone, so you have a little bit of a clip right here, and you can simply clip this to your Collar. Then you can use either the free Rode app, Rodecaster, or GarageBand for your iPhone, or you can even use the Anchor app directly to edit your podcast and also publish it on that platform. This video is not sponsored by Anchor, however, it is a very easy way of getting your podcast off into the world. Now, this type of microphone is very different from the previously suggested ones. This microphone is specifically made to connect to smartphones, so it has a TRRS connection, which is signified by the 4 golden rings here. And it is also a omnidirectional microphone. So this is going to pick up basically everything that is around it. Now, there's a couple of very specific purposes I would suggest this microphone for. Number one would be to have something that picks your voice up a little better than just using your phone. And that is something that I would say this microphone does very well. The second one is that it is incredibly small. You can just simply pack this really, really lightly, and you have something that you can really simply travel with. And the third one is that with this setup, you can do something that you don't really have the ability to do with the other types of microphones, and that is, for example, a walking type of podcast. So you can just clip this to your Collar when you have a jacket on or something and take a walk through the woods. That basically gives you an option for a totally different type of experiential podcast, basically, where you take the person with you into the nature. Now, this is maybe just an idea in my head and nobody really would care. However, what I have used this for is to basically do a personal journal entry while walking in the woods. That way, it is definitely something that is easier to use than having to hold my phone up to my face or something. I just clipped this right there, walked in the woods and spoke to myself for 20 minutes, which might have been weird if anybody saw me. However, it was really reflective for me to be able to speak my thoughts and have them recorded. Now, one last benefit with this setup is that you can even get an adapter like, for example, this here, and plug it into your phone and have 2 of these microphones connected to your phone at the same time, which basically gives you a recording of 2 channels. So you have the left channel for one person and the right channel for another person, and then later you can split those up into 2 mono channels and then bring them back together for an edited podcast. Now, this gives you a very travel-friendly setup for up to 2 people, recorded directly on your phone, and it's simply to go. And then I have one last thought about this microphone, and that goes straight in line with the next microphone suggestion as well. And that is that it is more versatile than for podcasting. With this microphone, for example, you can also create interviews in front of a camera. You can also set it up for vlogging and have better audio there. So this is not just for podcasting, but it is basically for all types of content creation. And even in Instagram live streams, you can use something like this to improve your audio. But you can maybe even do that more with the next suggestion, which is the Rode VideoMic NTG. And that's the one that I have right here recording the whole video. I now have brought the Rode VideoMic NTG straight in the shot here, and basically at a podcasting distance. This is a microphone that is usually intended to be used on top of your camera. However, with this latest iteration of the Rode VideoMic series, Rode actually built a feature into this microphone which was never seen in that series before. And that is that with a USB-C cable, you can actually use this microphone also on a computer directly connected for remote interviews, connecting it to your computer to directly record your audio there, your voiceovers, or your podcast. Now this is, just as the SmartLav, a weird suggestion for podcasting or a very uncommon one. However, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I also want to suggest things that are very versatile. And that is one of the reasons why I am suggesting this for this purpose, because it can up-level more than just your podcast. It can increase the arsenal of possibilities by being able to use it on your camera as a shotgun microphone. It can also be used, as I am doing right here, usually out of frame in a studio environment, basically a boom microphone with an extension cord. And it has great inbuilt features like, for example, the safety track recording, the low cut filter, high pass filter, and also the gain knob, which helps you also control how loud your audio signal is. All of this in a microphone that is, yes, the most expensive single microphone in the set. However, it is also giving you a stellar audio quality and also an incredible feature set and versatility, again, to be used in many different settings. And just like the SmartLav, you can also use an adapter like this and, for example, a camera to record two of these microphones if you ever do an interview, for example. So that option is also available to you. You can also connect two of these to a computer via USB. However, using two USB microphones with one computer rarely goes very well, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that kind of setup. So how do these microphones sound? And also maybe that draws the decision which microphone you like best and which type of characteristic you like best for your podcast. In this video, I'm not going to show all the different tests that I did. For that, I have a specific video on my channel that you can check out in the description down below, which will show you the different tests which I did with pretty much all of the microphones that I have available to me. There, I am comparing the microphones with foam screen, without foam screen, and also with different distances to the microphone, so that you can have a listen and get a feel for these different types of microphones and more. Now, what I'm going to show you here are a couple of the differences of the different microphones that I have specifically mentioned here. And specifically, we are going to start with their noise floor. Now in this test, it's probably also good to consider that I am recording with the Zoom H5, which is a handy recorder, not necessarily a studio recorder or a studio audio interface. It is relatively inexpensive, however, it gets the job done. Now with my comparison, I noticed that the Shure Beta 57A and the Rode VideoMic NTG are kind of the best microphones out of the bunch, in my personal opinion. They sound really, really good, they give me the result that I want, and they don't introduce all that much noise that I then have to clean up later. And then we have the sound of my voice in this type of room. This is not necessarily a sound-treated room. There's a lot of carpet, there's a couch. However, there are also very much clear surfaces and walls that I haven't yet treated in here. However, for this purpose of this comparison, I actually quite like that I have this environment because it basically gives you the real feel of not having a perfect studio. So it might make a difference between the different microphones once listening to them in this type of environment to get to know how this type of microphone will actually take a lot of work on for you in terms of getting rid of a lot of the echoes, for example, and make the voice sound that much more clear. So let's listen in. This is a demo recording of the ATR-2100 recorded over USB with my voice in this type of room. This is how it sounds. This is a demo recording of all three microphones at the very same time, pretty much at podcasting distance. This is how they sound with my voice in this type of room and without their pop filters. This is a demo recording of all three microphones at the very same time, pretty much at podcasting distance. This is how they sound with my voice in this type of room and without their pop filters. This is a demo recording of all three microphones at the very same time, pretty much at podcasting distance. This is how they sound with my voice in this type of room and without their pop filters. This is a demo recording of all three microphones at the very same time, pretty much at podcasting distance. This is how they sound with my voice in this type of room and without their pop filters. This is a demo of the ATR-2100 recorded over USB into Audition with the pop filter, and this is how it sounds with my voice in this type of room. This is a demo recording of all three microphones at the very same time with their respective pop filters attached. This is how they sound with my voice in this type of room. This is a demo recording of all three microphones at the very same time with their respective pop filters attached. This is how they sound with my voice in this type of room. This is a demo recording of all three microphones at the very same time with their respective pop filters attached. This is how they sound with my voice in this type of room. This is a demo recording of all three microphones at the very same time with their respective pop filters attached. This is how they sound with my voice in this type of room. I think the sound comparison is pretty clear. The three microphones at the top are the Beta 57A, the ATR-2100 and the VideoMic NTG. Out of the three, I'm actually most surprised with the VideoMic NTG. Being that this microphone is usually intended for shotgun purposes, being on top of your camera, this microphone really functions stellarly with the proximity effect. Now, I had to engage the -20 dB pad that is built into the microphone because when I was that close to the microphone, I was clipping already inside of the microphone before it even hit my audio recorder. So please be aware of that. However, in terms of sound, it sounds really rich, full, and just very, very powerful. Next, I would say the Beta 57A is also an amazing podcast microphone, giving a clear, full-sounding voice and also the ability to go very, very close. The proximity effect, again, also gives you a very nice, cinematic, deep voice. Next, we also have the ATR-2100, which I would say is a close contender to the bunch, just not that amazing. But of course you get what you pay for. With more features at a lower price tag comes that all of the features and all of the functionalities are probably also a little bit reduced in terms of the quality. Now, if this microphone gives you everything you want, it is a great microphone, and with a little bit of post-processing you can also get that sounding incredible. Then lastly, we have the SmartLav Plus. Of course, it sounds vastly different from all of these microphones compared here because it is a vastly different microphone. It has a omnidirectional pickup pattern and is a completely different use case. However, I still wanted to include it here so that you can listen in how that differs to all these podcast-related microphones that are actually more so made for that purpose of getting you this full, clear-sounding, cinematic voice of a podcast. And once again, we are left with an almost impossible decision to make. Which microphone would you choose? Now, if I listen back to all of these results and take into consideration the feature set and those kind of things, I have made my decisions for different use cases. And of course, based on the fact that I own all of these microphones, I also have use cases for kind of all of them. Now, to start with, if I had to choose one of all of these microphones, I would probably go with the Rode VideoMic NTG. This microphone is incredibly versatile and incredibly good sounding. I can put it on my camera, I can put it on a boom arm like so and have it outside the shot recording me in the studio. I can also connect it via USB to my computer and record a remote podcast or voiceover with it. That gives me an incredible range of usability for this microphone. The additional features like the safety track and low cut and high pass and those kind of filters also make it that much better. However, there are also these other microphones, and there are good reasons for each one as well. First up, I would suggest the Rode SmartLav Plus if you want a setup that is incredibly small for traveling, maybe for personal journal type podcasts, if you just want to clip it to yourself and record a short episode as an update on what you're doing, how it's going, or such kind of things. Even for personal journaling, I would say this is a great choice. And again, for under $100 US, it is a great one at that. Next up, knowing I want to take podcasting more seriously and I do mostly solo episodes as well as remote interviews, I would go with something like the ATR-2100 or the Samsung Q2U. The ability to use this with a USB connection is incredibly feature-rich and gives me the option to just use this as a standalone microphone very easily without having to use an additional hardware recorder. So this is an amazing choice starting out. However, I would immediately also buy a foam ball because this makes it sound even better. And once you outgrow this microphone and you want to invest into something more, you can easily invest in a hardware recorder and also audio interface and start using the XLR connection on this microphone, or you buy yourself the Shure Beta 57A or Shure Beta 58A, which is also a great option in the same lineup. Now, based on the fact that I have two of these microphones, it is pretty clear that I use these for podcasting myself. I use the Zoom H5 as the audio recorder, which, as I've mentioned before, I would gladly replace with the Zoom F6 for its specific features. However, it does get the job done. These two microphones and this audio recorder gives me the ability to record podcast interviews as well as remote interviews with a relatively small setup, which I also can travel with. This whole setup goes for around $500 plus or minus with cables and everything. However, it also gives you great result and usability. Now, of course, it is more than the ATR-2100, but it also gives you a different kind of result and also a different kind of feature set. Now there you have my opinion on podcasting microphones and different types of sets for different types of use cases, as well as their sound comparison and noise floor, so that you can make a better informed decision. Now please let me know in the comment section down below which microphone you would like to pick up or would like to own. And also, if you have a podcast, leave your link there as well. And if you have any questions or feedback, please leave that in the comment section too. Now, if this video was helpful to you, please give it a like so that other people can find this information as well, and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this as well as on other topics. I hope you have an amazing day, make great recordings, start your podcast, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao!